This is part 2 of my 2025 books in review. I'm just still working my way through the books I read this year and got a lot of catching up to do till I get to where I am in the year currently. So we're just going to hop right in and keep on going. So next that I read this year was Neuromancer by William Gibson. And I feel like I'm going to get some hate on my opinions on this one. I acknowledge that I probably need to read it again since I read it the first time. For whatever reason, I couldn't get into this book. It's sort of credited as being the first major contribution to the cyberpunk genre. And it's sort of the birthplace of all these terms that we know and heard and everything else of, hacking and cyberspace and jacking in and even the Matrix and these types of things. So it was the first major novel, major story, as far as I know, that sort of played with this idea and sort of started the ball rolling on cyberpunk as a genre. It's considered a cornerstone of science fiction, and for whatever reason, though, I couldn't get into it. I think at the time my head just wasn't in the right space. The main character, Case, he's this hacker, and a criminal hacker, and he either stole from his employers or botched a job or something. But for whatever reason, I can't remember, his nervous system got burned, so he wasn't able to hack anymore. He wasn't able to enter the cyberspace and do the thing he loved. He's sort of living in this existence of trying to get back to that, but as far as he knows, he can't. And he gets offered this job by this sort of mercenary girl, Molly, who is working for this guy who can claim he can fix his nervous system so that he can get back into hacking, back into cyberspace, if he does this job for him. So he accepts, and it repairs the damage to him, but there's this caveat of if he doesn't finish the job within a certain amount of time, there's a poison in him that's just going to fry his nervous system again, and he'll be back to where he began. So he's working with this group, this man Armitage, who has this sort of hidden past, not who he says he is, and they're trying to break into this security system to release the first fully sentient AI. This AI that's working with Wintermute, I think was his name. He's the other half of this AI they're trying to break out. They're trying to free from this system that it's in. And the AI that they're trying to free is Neuromancer. And they believe that if they combine these two super intelligent, semi-conscious AIs, that it's going to create the first truly artificial intelligence. And yeah, it's a cool idea, and I really should have dug it and got into it, but just for whatever reason, I was distracted while I was reading it, and I couldn't keep the plot in my head. I definitely want to go back and read it. I definitely understand why it's a classic, why it's considered sort of the pinnacle of the cyberpunk genre. Yeah, I thought the settings were all pretty cool. I liked it when they have to go up to this sort of colony space station, this giant cylinder space station in orbit of Earth. That's like a resort destination, almost like a Las Vegas. That's where they have to break in this system to get the AI. And I thought it was a cool descriptions of it. I thought the environment was cool. Sort of the hacking was interesting. The sort of portrayal of cyberspace. At the time, I couldn't really wrap my head around what he was doing and keep track of what was going on. But I can understand why it's sort of the top of its game, but I'm definitely going to read it again. I'm hoping to pretty sooner rather than later. I'm hoping to read it again because I know I have to give it a second chance. But so I didn't hate it for what I got out of it at the time. It was just I was just too distracted and not sort of there for it. But yeah. Moving on. Next up, I read was the Hugo Winners, 1976 to 1979, Volume 4. So it was edited by Isaac Asimov, and it's a collection of all the Hugo Winners for those years of the short stories, novellas, things like that. And I have Volume 1 that I've read already, and I actually found these in the free book mart at my local recycle depot. So they have this sweet program of taking books, leaving books, and I found a lot of really cool stuff there. So it's one of my go-to stops to get these free books. And yeah, it's just a good collection. All the the winners for those years of the Hugo Awards. So you got a lot of stuff by like Roger Zelazny, Fritz Leiber, Isaac Asimov, Joe Haldeman. So a lot of the big names, and it was fun read. I didn't do a lot of short stories and novellas before finding these two books. I just figured I wouldn't enjoy the novella format, and I would like things that were longer, more fleshed out. But a couple of these I really, really liked. Bicentennial Man by Isaac Asimov, I believe. Just make sure that was in this one. Yeah, Bicentennial Man's in this one, and that's just a great classic read of part of his robot series, the 3 laws of robotics, and about a robot that continually upgrades itself and eventually is considered a real human, I think. Other standouts that I saw from this, Borderlands: A Soul, I thought was a cool Larry Niven. I've read the Ringworld books and stuff, so this short stories in that same sort of universe, same aliens and ships and things, and I just thought it was a fun little mystery heist involving black holes and cool aliens and stuff like that. So it was a fun little read. And but honestly, my biggest takeaway, the thing I kind of enjoyed reading, not the most, because the short stories are all really good, but before every short story, Isaac Asimov would do a little blurb about the author of the short story that's you're about to read. And I enjoyed reading these little blurbs because it was kind of an insight into his mindset on, the authors he respected, the authors he are friends with and joke around with, and also, the authors that he had issues with. In some cases, it seemed like he was bitter that he didn't win the award and they did. And a lot of his little blurbs at the beginning, they were humorous, they were funny, they were just a short little quick insight into his opinions on that author, and a lot of it feels like it's in good fun. I'm reading more short stories and novellas and stuff since reading these. I'm kind of appreciating the format a bit more, so yeah, can see some more in the future. The next that I read was 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. I think this was written parallel to them making the movie. I think so the movie wasn't based on the book, and the book isn't based on the movie. They sort of worked hand in hand, I believe. And to be honest, I haven't seen the movie in probably 25 years. Like it's a classic. It's considered one of the great sci-fi, one of the great Kubrick, and it just confused me. That's all I remember from the movie. And it was just this weird art film that is beautifully shot and everything like that, but it just left me scratching my head. But reading the book was amazing. It's one of my favorite Arthur C. Clarke, if not my favorite Arthur C. Clarke that I've read so far. And I've read quite a bit of him. But this was the first I read this year, and it answered all my questions that the movie had left me stumped with. It felt like everything just made way more sense, and they were able to go into things more deeper. And if people are not familiar with the movie, the beginning of it is this sort of, it's just this weird scene of these monkeys sort of discovering this black monolith with this creepy musical overtone. And yeah, I had no idea what was going on. And the ending of the movie is famously confusing and everything like that. But reading the book, it answered all those questions. And the beginning, a decent chunk of the beginning is about those monkeys and what's going on and the purpose of this monolith and what it's doing, and just sort of like they're able to just flesh everything out more. But it was just, you understand how more, why this computer program is killing them off and the reasoning behind that. And the whole ending of the book, it made way more sense. And it still is a weird ending with the main character turning into this giant star baby or something, and it's orbiting Earth, and it's just left at that. But you kind of understood a bit better where it was coming from and the reasoning behind it. And the movies, yes, was a more visual storytelling, but the book was able to just give you more information and explain things better and make the world make sense. And I loved reading it. I've heard the sequels of the book fall off a lot in quality. I have the second one that I will read just because I want to know what's in store. I don't think I'll read anything after that, just from what I've heard general consensus of, but who knows? We'll see. It could be this thing for whatever reason, captures my attention and makes me excited to keep going. So, but I loved it. I loved that book. Next I read in the year was Solaris by Stanislaw Lem. And I feel like, same as Neuromancer, I'm gonna get some hate on my opinion on it. But just like Neuromancer, I was in this weird state, or I was just too distracted reading it, and I couldn't focus on the book as much as I wanted to. So I will reread it, probably when I reread Neuromancer, just because I feel like I did injustice to him, but because it's a pretty well loved science fiction as well. And when I started it, I was super interested. I thought it almost was a horror story in some ways. There's this planet Solaris that scientists have been studying for centuries, pretty much, from this station that's floating just above the ocean. And the entire planet is just this ocean that's one organism, and it's believed it has sentience, it's intelligent. And so the whole point of this station is to study it and try to communicate with it and make some sort of contact with it, but it's been an impossible endeavor. And over the centuries, the scientists are more just observers to the weird phenomenon that happened on the surface. But it starts off immediately with this new scientist landing on the station and trying to solve this mystery. There's this sort of horror aspect of him coming to the station for the first time because one of the scientists is dead. Like, he can't get answers from the other members. One of them's locked himself away, but there's just these there's people are showing up on the thing that shouldn't be there, and he's meeting his old girlfriend who died of suicide, and it's just their deepest regrets are being manifested in real physical form. And it was this cool idea, cool premise, and it was creeping me out at first because it's got this horror tint to everything, sort of felt like at the beginning. And just, for whatever reason, about halfway through, I just couldn't focus on it anymore, and just sort of lost the thread of the plot. But I need to go back and give it a second chance and just, sit down and do it in a day or something and just focus and burn through it. And because I feel like I need to give it that much, because it was this really cool idea and a really cool premise and really interesting science behind it, and the discussion of this organism, this worldwide organism. And hopefully, maybe start of next year, I'll reread these ones, or we'll see. Next up that I read this year was Caliban's War by James S.A. Corey. This is the second novel of the Expanse series. The first one, Leviathan Wakes, I read last year as well. And I loved that first one. I thought it was really fun, really cool, really creepy at parts. And so I had high hopes for the second one, and the second one was good. The second one, it's a big book to get through, but it's, brings back all the old characters. And where the first one was dealing with this threat from outside the solar system coming in, and the proto-molecule, I think it's called, and just sort of this unknowable entity creature that takes the material it contacts with and it turns it into something else. And it was this almost Lovecraftian horror in some ways, and it ended in this big way of leaving this big unknown of what's going to happen in the rest of the series. And so the second one, the proto-molecule is still a big part of it, and it's more of like, it was more of a political, there's war breaking out between the forces of Mars and the Earth Union, the European Union, or the UN, sorry, United Nations of Earth and stuff like that. And it's sort of this conflict erupts from this misunderstanding of both of these squadrons of troops from both sides of the war gets devastated by one of these proto-molecule. I hope I'm remembering it correctly, that it's a proto-molecule or something like that. Just wipes out both these squads, this monster that was unkillable, it seemed, and there's only one survivor of it, and she's sort of like grilled on what happened, because stemming from this one conflict, this misunderstanding, this war erupts in the solar system between the forces. And the crew of the Rocinante, is the ship, find themselves back in it, but it's more of they're on this sort of detective mission to find this missing girl who they believe was kidnapped by the same people that released this creature. And if it was released on purpose or not, we'll find out later. But along the way, they're sort of thrust right in the middle of this conflict between planets, and it's up to them to sort of save the day again. But I really like their world building, and I really like the rules they've established for space travel and conflict. And I really like their idea of sort of everyone on the ships, when traveling, they have to be in sort of like this force cushion couch that's constantly injecting them with needles to keep their body running under these high gravity, high G maneuvers and stress and speed that they're putting these ships through. And it sort of was a cool idea to get around the very real problem of the G forces that would happen from some of the maneuvers these guys do. And I thought it was a smart way of getting around this problem and making it space travel feel really unique, where people are just constantly being injected with steroids and adrenaline and things like that to just stop their lungs and hearts from collapsing from the strain. And traveling in space, it felt futuristic, but it still felt like it was an ordeal, and it wasn't for the faint of heart and things like that. And so there was a lot of fun action and a lot of fun ideas. Still leaves a lot of unanswered questions for the rest of the series, and it ends on sort of this reminder of this much bigger threat of what's happening on Venus, and sets up the next book in a good way that makes you want to keep reading. I don't know if I'll do every book in the series. I know I plan on doing at least the third one as well, because I already own that one, but I got a lot to read through, so I don't know if I'll get around to doing the whole series. But thanks, guys, for joining me on this second video. Hopefully it all turns out, and hopefully you'll stick around for some of the later ones, get my thoughts more in order, and closer I get to where I am in the year. But leave some comments on sort of what you liked, what you agreed with, what you disagreed with, any recommendations, once again, that you think I should sort of read to expand my knowledge on the genre. And thanks for stopping by.